It is once again that time, the time y'all have been waiting for. The time to speculate about the future of The Dragon Prince Season 4. I think I have made dozens of these videos, and one of these days I'm just going to bundle them all together into a 4-hour-long compilation. But I do think it's important to keep making these videos now, because we actually have information to work on and base our speculations on. That does not mean we have as much information as we might want, but I do think that we are in a drastically different situation from the one that we were in just a couple months ago. I stopped making the Dragon Prince videos not only because there were other series that I was more interested in at the moment, such as Amphibia and the Owl House, and also all my Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones videos, but also because we just didn't have a lot to talk about, and it was getting really dispiriting to just try to fill up 10 minutes going into different tangents and little anecdotes and semi-baseless speculations that were just me shooting into the dark, while trying to evade the fact that there really was not that much to say. Now, if you have not been paying close attention to the extended hiatus that we've been on, you might not really see what the big deal is. You might say, well, there still isn't very much to say, right? And that's true, there isn't. We still don't have the release date, and we still don't know much of what Season 4 will be like at this point. We only have the little subtitle, The Mystery of Erebos, which isn't even the title of Season 4, but the title of this next subsection of The Dragon Prince that will extend through Seasons 4, 5, and 6. But still, where we are is drastically different from where we were just a few months ago. I want to keep saying that because I think it's an important point to keep in mind. If you've been someone who hasn't been keeping in super close touch with the fandom, or you just were not along with the fandom for the entirety of the hiatus, you have no idea how bad it got. The Dragon Prince subreddit got really loopy, just because there was not much to say. Yes, I must say I have always felt at a distance from Zoomer humor, despite being in that age bracket myself, but even by those standards, the stuff the Dragon Prince subreddit was coming up with got very strange, and I could not begin to unravel the weird network of memes and in-jokes for someone who did not already have experience with that space. It's been a long time since we've gotten Season 3 of The Dragon Prince, and the fandom has understandably flagged a bit since then. And I think it's worth keeping in mind that a lot of fans of the show are teenagers, and you change a lot in 2 years as a teenager. Heck, I've changed a lot as a young adult just out of adolescence. When I look at myself in 2019 compared to where I am now, I see a completely different person. When I look at how I saw the world back then, it's like I'm looking through a muddied glass. Everything looks a little distorted. That's not to be all triumphalist and say that I automatically have all the answers now, but I do feel that I'm in a fundamentally different place in my life than I was back then. I feel both more confused and less burdened. As for Season 4 of The Dragon Prince, I'm still excited. It is true that it is perhaps not the huge fantasy epic that everyone is coalescing around like it would have been if it had released last year, because we've got all these other stories coming out. We've got the new Lord of the Rings, we've got the new Game of Thrones, we've got the new Avatar remake that will probably be coming out sometime early 2023. All of these will have much larger fandoms than the Dragon Prince, and they've kind of taken a lot of air out of that Dragon Prince fandom, kind of suffocated it a bit. But nonetheless, I'm still excited to see where this show goes. Season 3 ended on a high note. Not just in that it had an optimistic ending, but that those last few episodes of Season 3 were some of the best in the show. And they leave the show in a really intriguing and tense and ambiguous position that is fertile ground for a lot of great storytelling. So I can't wait to see what they do. Hopefully, we will see a lot more about Erebos' backstory. It is called The Mystery of Erebos, for the record. And it does make sense that there is going to be such an intense focus, it seems like, on Erebos, considering that we do not know a lot about him. Compared to all the other characters in the show, Erebos is the one who is the most mysterious, the most enigmatic. I do want to see some of those questions about Erebos revealed. But I also just want to be a little closer to his voice. I want to kind of be in his perspective, seeing what he sees, but not necessarily knowing what he knows. It would be hilarious and quite insightful if we got a couple episodes that were not really about Erebos, but just took place from his perspective and he was narrating everything like he does for the opening little intro of the show, leaving us to kind of parse out what's truth, what's fiction, what's an exaggeration. It's all quite intriguing. I want Erebos to kind of be a step ahead of us. I want us to constantly be left guessing as to what he's thinking. That makes for a much more compelling villain and a lot more tense, dramatic situations. A lot more robust storytelling. But I will say that that's a kind of uncertainty that is certainly superior to the uncertainty that we have been in for the last several years regarding when the show will release its next season. Now, I think I might have been a little hyperbolic when I was talking about how long the show has been taking. They were not able to do any production on Season 4 before the show was renewed for its final 4 seasons in summer 2020. They were throwing around ideas, but that's not the same as actually systematically working on building these seasons of the show. Production had come to a complete halt, and it needed to be restarted again. It's not quite the same as starting a show from scratch, but I do believe that the time commitment is somewhat similar, in that between seasons of a normal show that has a season every year or so, you have the luxury of working on multiple seasons at the same time. So by the time Season 1 airs, you're already working on Season 2, so it can come out in a year or so. But since the production completely halted after Season 3, they had to go and restart that process from the ground up. And so from there to releasing Season 4 at the end of this year is about 2.5 years, which is a long time, but it's not that long. I think it's rather reasonable considering the comprehensive rebuild of the franchise that they had to undergo. It is quite exciting, as a side note, that we do have a final general idea of when the show is going to come out. It's less than 6 months away, unless there is a delay, which there might be, but I don't think there's reason to believe that there will be a delay at this point. that it will be delayed until 2023, considering what they said about it coming out at the end of this year. But I don't like to be fatalistic and nihilistic unless I have reason to be. I am vehemently against this cynical, whining quietism that we call doomerism. But I do think that we are steadily making progress toward the final release date of the show. I think it's going to come out sooner than a lot of us anticipate. And once it does, no one is going to remember this 2.5-year waiting period. Sure, it might annoy us for a couple years going into the future, but eventually it's not going to bother us anymore, and we're just going to celebrate having the show. And future generations that love and enjoy the show will just be able to watch it all the way through, and they will never really think about this long delay, except to note it as a somewhat interesting footnote in the long saga of the Dragon Prince. Don't believe me? Think about Harry Potter. Do you know how long there was between Harry Potter Book 3, The Prisoner of Azkaban, and Book 4, The Goblet of Fire? 3 years. This was a major annoyance for Harry Potter fans at that time. Does anyone care about that now? No, of course not. Does anyone really acknowledge that long delay now? Not really. The people who experienced it move on with their lives. The people who didn't don't really take notice of it. It's the same thing not just in film and TV, but in big construction projects. You have railways, and you have long, very complicated bridge designs that take years and years and face extremely long delays in getting built. And yet when someone looks at that bridge or that railway system or some enormous skyline-defining tower 10-15 years in the future, do you think they will care about that delay? Not really. So take heart, the delay will end soon, the hiatus will come to a conclusion, and a lot of us will feel a little silly that we allowed the paranoia and anxiety of that hiatus to occupy us to such an extent. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think that the showrunners could have made some better decisions. I definitely think that sprawling out into all of these different media, video games and board games, was kind of a mistake. It might not have directly impacted the amount of time Season 4 took, but it did demonstrate a set of priorities that was rather diffuse and meandering. And I think it speaks to a general lack of precise focus that is perhaps understandable coming out of the wild times of pandemic summer 2020, all those restrictions, and also suddenly having the show renewed and having to scramble to come up with something to fill in the gap between Season 3 and Season 4. But there is still a lot that the show could have done better. There are a lot more efficient decisions that they could have made. And I think that this whole tiered process of making the first 3 seasons and then the next 3 seasons, and presumably there will be another gap before Season 7, is kind of a mistake, and I'd rather have just a season than a year than another season. But we will have the Dragon Prince soon enough, and all of these concerns will fade into distant memories. I'm looking forward to that. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon. See y'all soon. Keep watching the Dragon Prince. Adios, comrades.